One of the more iconic brokers in New York City, the great Bob Knakal.
The top sales broker who has been selling investment properties in New York City since 1984.
Bob Knakal, who has sold over $24 billion worth of commercial real estate.
And is known as the GOAT in the industry.
Former founder and owner of Massey Knakal.
Today, in New York City investment sales, there are 31 companies owned by or run by people we taught the business to.
Welcome to the Bob Knakal Show. I've been an investment sales broker in New York City since 1984. And I absolutely love this business.
Why are you different than every other person out there trying to do what you do? The more highly specialized you are, the easier it is to show that you're different. That differentiation leads to a competitive advantage. I've always been very entrepreneurial by nature. I wanted a bigger challenge. I wanted to be the next Wall Street guy, like every other Wharton kid. The real estate business is not magical. It's not rocket science. Real estate is such a great business because it is one of the purest forms of meritocracy there is. You get out of it exactly what you put into it. It's not about my ego. It's about me wanting to do everything I possibly can to put me in a position to potentially meet that one buyer who's going to pay more than anybody else. Every great company figures out what they can do better than anybody else in the whole world. Focus on that and stick to it. Despite how good you are, you're going to have tough times. The love of the business keeps you around so that you'll be around for when the times inevitably get better, which they will.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Mislaibeled. If you're watching this, if you can please like, subscribe, and comment with me in the world. We're in New York City this week with a very, very special guest, one of the more iconic brokers in New York City, the great Bob Knakal, who's really, again, originally was with CBRE, founded Massey Knakal, then to Cushman, then to JLL, and now started your own
BKREA.
BKREA, again, 40 under 40, has sold over 2,000 buildings in New York. Probably that number's probably went up since the last thing I read. Over 22 billion. Where are we at now?
A little over 22 billion.
A little over 22 billion. Okay, I'm doing a good job. Yeah. Back of mind. You have your own show also, right? You have your own podcast.
I have a podcast with a live audience. First, let me say, Label's great to be here today. Thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Absolutely. Likewise. This is, like I was saying to you before, one of the ones that I really look forward to, just because I've read a lot about you due to starting in the real estate brokerage. My field myself I started late. I started when I was 23, and I only landed up in real estate because I was originally an insurance broker, and I absolutely hated that because you always had a person on one end and like a conglomerate on the other end, and it was just very difficult. The ability to negotiate between two people wasn't really existent. You were kind of like dealing with an underwriter who wasn't the decision maker. So I really just wanted two people that I could help put together and just be able to speak to both people. So if I have a great relationship with the seller and a buyer, I could negotiate a deal. So that's how I landed up in real estate. But yeah, you've always been someone obviously very, very well known.
Nice. What year did you get into the business?
I got in the beginning of 2018.
Mm-hmm.
That was we have a lot to talk about. June 2019 was a tough summer for me. I will tell you that. It was the first year that I was scheduled to make real money. I was 24 at the time, and I had 5 deals in hard contract, and they all fell apart. June 14th, boom.
Welcome to the business.
Yeah, that was the business. But I'd saved up. Literally, I put aside in 2018 $40,000, which was like the sum of money I needed to like mediocre survive. I like pulled that together, and I knew I have 1 year that I'm set aside right now, and I need to make money. So that was a tough summer. No question about that. But there are blessings in disguise, obviously, as things happen. I ended up getting involved in national stuff and just different areas of the business, and thank God really broke through the following year. So that was really, really great. But I want to get a little bit of background from yourself. I know, just really start with, I guess, just throw back to, where you grew up and kind of what kind of home and how that just contributed to.
Yeah, well, I grew up in a little town in northern New Jersey called Maywood, which is in Bergen County, sandwiched between Paramus and Hackensack. Maywood was really, really small town. At the time, I think we had like 14,000 people, so we didn't even have our own high school. I went to Hackensack High School. But the quintessential small suburban town, I still have a group of 6, 7 friends that we all went to kindergarten together, still friends. In fact, my only friends outside of the real estate industry, believe it or not. It was going to the park after school and play either basketball or baseball or football and wait until the fire department blew the whistle at 6 o'clock. That was a signal for everybody to go home and have dinner. So it was a great upbringing. Lived at home. My dad was a high school principal. Fortunately, not my high school, because my high school principal's son went to our school and he got unmitigated grief all the time.
You're talking to a person who had that exact experience, by the way.
Okay.
I literally went to my dad's school and he was my principal. So I share your friends.
Right. So it
pain.
probably wasn't easy for you. Mom was a housewife and, just really enjoyed upbringing. Played baseball and basketball in high school. When I graduated high school, I went to the Wharton School at Penn, played baseball at Penn, and had my first real estate job the summer between freshman and sophomore year. Wanted to get something that would look good on my resume. I wanted to be a Wall Street guy, just like every other Wharton kid. So wanted to get a job at an investment bank or a commercial bank that would look good on my resume. And, as the story goes, I've told it a million times that, I walked into a Coldwell Banker office with my resume thinking it was a bank. And they were the only ones hiring college kids for the summer. Took the job, loved it, went back my next 2 summers, and then started with CB here in Manhattan when I got out of school. So that was a very serendipitous start to getting into a business that has turned out to be not only my vocation, but it's my hobby as well.
I'm curious about your thoughts right now on how important you see school as to the success of your career. So you went to Wharton. That's prestigious.
I don't view it as having any correlation to the success of my career, believe it or not. I often joke that I wish right after high school I just got into brokerage, got my license, started brokering, because for the most part, two reasons. One, and it's half joking, I said I would have 4 more years of deals under my belt. I think the real benefit of having gone to college, first, I'm very, very proud that I went to the Wharton School. Fantastic school. But so much of what you learn in college you never use.
Yeah.
I think the real benefit of college is the life experience you get out of it, and the learning to learn part of it. But for the most part, I think for real estate brokerage, particularly, college curriculum doesn't do much for you. I mean, I think to have a curriculum that focuses on salesmanship and human behavior and persuasion and psychology and why people do what they do, that would go a much longer way towards success in the real estate business than knowing accounting or finance or anything like that. So
yeah, do you feel like those are all skills that you picked up as you went along?
Yeah, I think a lot of them came from just being in the business, wanting to meet people, trial and error. Speaking in public is a big skill that I think young people should have. I think everybody, before they get out of college, should take a public speaking class. To get comfortable speaking in front of people. You're always making presentations. If you're a salesperson, you're meeting with people, talking in front of people. You want to feel comfortable, want to seem like you're comfortable, even if you're not. And so I think those are skills that will help you propel your career, as opposed to a lot of the stuff we learn in college, which is basically useless.
So funny. I'm obviously in total agreement with you. You went to Wharton, so it's obviously a very prestigious school. So I was just curious to hear your take. I'm not surprised exactly, but exactly what you're saying. You go to CB, right? You're there for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then you start Massey Knakal. It's pretty short time to be somewhere 4 years, your first 4 years, and then start your own thing is pretty quick. What are some factors someone should take into account? The famous question is whether to stay or whether to go. And I think a lot of people always find themselves in that position, in any industry, really. What are the factors that you took into account and one should take into account if they're debating whether or not to, start their own thing or stick where they are?
Yeah, well, Paul and I had a lot of ambition. We had a lot of confidence in ourselves. We thought that we could create something that was a little different. We actually liked CB very, very much. Liked the people. They were great. Wanted to stay there. But we suggested to our bosses that we make our investment sales group a separate profit center within the office. And at the time, CB had about 60 brokers leasing office space, 20 in the retail leasing department. In our second year, at the end of our second year, we were made the bosses of the investment sales division, which upset some of the folks who had been around for a while. But we had gotten up the learning curve very quickly, had some really great early success. And so, we wanted to make our division a profit center. And of course, CB being at the time was the largest real estate company in the United States, they weren't going to make a special deal for two young kids. So I understand today why they didn't do that. But we just felt like it was the thing to do, and
seems like you made the right decision.
We had a lot of energy, and
I love that. I'm actually curious to hear a little bit about where that ambition came from specifically. Like you strike me. I'm just talking to you now for a few minutes. You're like in this middle space. Like typically when I meet someone who's like uber competitive, they're more intense. But you seem pretty laid back. Would you say like? Would you say you're competitive? It's because
I think that a lot of that came from sports. Playing sports my whole life, very, very competitive. I am extraordinarily competitive, and a lot of people say that, Bob, you seem kind of laid back.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just the way I come off. But I hate losing. I love winning, and real estate is such a great business because it is one of the purest forms of meritocracy there is, I think. I think you get out of it exactly what you put into it. I love that aspect of it. And, that was something that encouraged us to start the firm as well.
Where would you say when you started CB, what were you doing specifically that allowed you to have success so quickly?
We focused on a geographic territory, and the company didn't really have a lot of structure relative to investment sales. But Paul and I were both young kids right out of school. We come into Manhattan, and it's giant market, and we're like, look, we can't possibly know everything about every neighborhood. Let's just pick one neighborhood, become a market expert. We actually adopted what in the residential brokerage world they call farming. You know how an agent will pick a neighborhood and just knock on every door down the street? It was the same kind of thing. We knocked on every door, around the block, and then went to the next block and had two very small territories. But we got to really become experts in that area. And that really created an easy way for us to differentiate ourselves from everyone else, saying we had expertise in this area. And we had also a value proposition that was very simple. We said, we're only going to sell buildings. We're only going to represent sellers. We're only going to work on exclusives. And we're only going to work in this neighborhood. So that was very easy to understand, nothing opaque about it. And it really gave us the ability to go in and talk to a seller and say, look, no, we haven't been around for 20 years. We haven't sold hundreds of buildings. We've sold a few, but they're all in this neighborhood. We know everything about this neighborhood. We know what the prices are. We know what's available. We know who's buying, who's selling, what new tenants are moving in, what new developments are going on. So we can advocate for you to get you a better price. We can convince buyers to give a higher price for your property because we understand this neighborhood better than anybody.
Why did you see the exclusive component and only repping sellers as an example as an important factor to align yourself with?
Just looking at it, it was very apparent to us early on that most owners, and this is not a disparaging comment about owners, but most owners think their property is worth more than it really is worth. So the sales process is an educational process. And once they get to the point where they're ready to sell at the market, usually there's 3 or 4 buyers that would pay that price. So we're like, hey, maybe we'll represent a buyer, but they'll be willing to pay the same price as 3 or 4 other people. How do we know we're going to get the deal?
Right.
And so we like the probability. Real estate is very, very much a probability-based business. And we thought the probability of making money would be higher if we represented the seller as opposed to representing the buyer.
For sure, that makes sense. So, but it's also at the same time harder to get an exclusive. So,
well, if you represent sellers only, there are 2 sales you have to make. The first sale is getting hired, selling the owner on hiring you exclusively. And then the second sale is actually selling the building. And oftentimes the first sale is harder than the second one.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. A lot of times they don't want to commit to who they're going to hire. So if you bring something to the table, it's on a paper in front of them. It's just an interesting. I've always had that, like, seen both sides of that. What is your day? What was your day looking like?
Back in those days?
Yeah. What's the basic routine?
Well, and again, no day is the same, but generally we were banging the phones as much time as we could. When we were in the office, we were on the phone the whole time. You know, we both got in very early. I was commuting from New Jersey at the time, and I was in the office at 6:20 every morning.
A.M.
Yeah, I got the very first bus of the day out of New Jersey, and went into the Port Authority, grabbed the subway to get up to 53rd and Madison, and then walked to 437 Madison, which is where our office was. But we were in early. We always did our research, our reading, our prep, our BOVs, all that stuff in the morning before 9 o'clock. The bell rang at 9. We were on the phone. And if we weren't on the phone, we were out looking at a building or meeting with a client to pitch it or showing a building. But when we were in the office between 9 and 5, we were making calls. And then after 5, you do some more office work, writing letters, things like that. But it very much the same way it is today.
Yeah.
Not much has changed over 40 years.
I mean, you obviously have the technology piece, which it sounds like you really, delved into, and I want to get to that. But specifically, it sounds like the start of Massey Knakal it was based on this, obviously, what you were saying with CB, but also the fact that this territorial system that no one really broke down methodically. Do you know why that is? That no one.
No, look, it's something that, again, was a very abstract concept. And don't forget, the whole industry has changed quite a bit. It's like, the people generally say, last week I closed deal 2,348.
You have a count.
We have a spreadsheet.
I love it.
But people generally say that's more buildings than any other broker sold in New York, probably in the United States. But the reason is that before the 80s, brokers didn't really specialize. Like if you look at some of the old timers that were old timers back when I started, these guys would sell a building, they'd lease space, they'd do an appraisal, they'd manage some buildings, did a little bit of everything. So it's kind of like in baseball pitching, they started keeping the relievers statistics in the 70s.
Yeah.
In the 1950s, the pitchers pitched a complete game. There were no relief pitchers really.
And they lasted for somehow or another.
Yeah.
They were fine.
So
no Tommy John.
So it's just the way baseball has changed, the industry has changed as well. And now people really focus on different specializations, and so it's a whole different thing. But we really felt like being able to give someone a reason for hiring us was important. And it was that expertise in doing one thing and trying to do it better than anyone.
So do you think that it's necessary for someone to have, let's just call it a USP, right? Unique selling proposition or a particular edge, if they want to go on their own? I mean, I think we both agree that action is really the way to go, probably. I think you would say that also. Just if you want to make money, stop thinking, no paralysis by analysis, start doing. But you hear the school of thought also from people that, like, I don't have an angle here. I don't have an edge. So, like, when you started, right, when you were building your way up.
I'll go to 40,000 feet and tell you there's three characteristics that I see very prevalently in the people who reach the very top of our business. Number one, expertise. You have to be an expert at something. In order to be an expert, it has to be a very narrow slice of the market. So narrow that you can know every single thing about it, but big enough that you can make a good living doing it. You could be the greatest expert in one building, know everything about it, but you can't make a great living in one building. So I think expertise is number one. Number two is passion. You have to love it. Business is cyclical. And through no fault of your own, there are going to be tough times. There are going to be times when HSTPA passes and you have 5 deals under contract that fall apart. No fault of your own. This stuff happens. So you have to really love the business, because that love of the business will get you through those tough times so that you stick around. Times inevitably are going to get better, but you got to be around for it. And then the third thing is being able to use discipline well. We all have access to the same amount of discipline, but everyone uses discipline differently. And you have to use discipline to keep doing the fundamentally sound things that you have to do over and over and over again, even when you don't see results. But keep doing them over and over. And ultimately, if you're doing the right things, those things will work for you.
How long would you say someone should spend in industry? There's a lot of, there's an easy barrier to, getting into industry is not very difficult. So naturally you have a lot of people that are looking to make a buck and they enter the field. How long would you say should someone be, at it, be in the business before assessing whether or not it's something that is a fit for them?
I think, except in rare cases, probably within 2 or 3 years, you have a good sense of whether you're going to make it or not. There were occasionally times where we could tell within a few months whether someone was going to make it or not. But most of the time, it takes a little while. And then also, there are times when folks get into habits that aren't quite so good, and sometimes they need a wake-up call. We used to have this thing where if someone wasn't doing well, we'd always give them a 30-day warning kind of, and basically say, look, you have 30 days to show immediate and sustained improvement. And what we found when you said that to somebody, about 25% of the time they picked themselves up by the bootstraps and their career took off.
Oh, really?
And it was a wake-up call. And then 25% of the time, people just kind of gave up. And then the other 50%, they just kind of went on, kept doing the same thing and ended up flaming out.
Yeah, the business could definitely burn people out. You definitely see that. When you started Massey Knakal, did you have a focus and a direct approach on building the brand, or was it just we're going to sell deals and our brand is just going to be built that way?
No, we were very, very intentional about understanding how brand and reputation were important. And don't forget, these are days way before social media.
Yeah.
We started the company in November of 1988. But we were creating content even when we didn't know we were creating content. Right. Every time I remember we sold our first building, we put together a little tombstone, put ads in the Real Estate Weekly and the New York Times, and made copies of it and mailed it out. We really believed in direct mail, to the point that, we had a quarterly newsletter. That newsletter started as just an 8.5 by 11 folded in half sheet of paper, and it got to be 4 pages, full color, or 4 pages. It got to be 4 color, and we did, I think, got up to 32 or 36 pages.
Oh, really?
With a distribution of over 300,000 every quarter. We were sending out over 3 million pieces of mail a year before email became popular, because we wanted to reinforce the brand. And it's what my buddy Ed Winslow refers to as proof stacking. You have to keep stacking the proof. Show that what you can do, that you've done this before, you've done this for other people, you've done it for them, you can do it for a new client. And so we were constantly sending out mail, constantly doing ads, constantly getting into the press. We courted people in the press. We said, all right, let's make up a list of everybody that writes about real estate in the New York media. And we take them out for lunch and we give them story ideas. And that worked really well. I'm often, 2,000 times a year, I'm quoted in the press because I'm still doing that. It's still, a new reporter comes on the scene and is working for Cranes or The Real Deal or Commercial Observer. I want to go meet with them, find out about them, and let them know that I'm happy to give insights if I know something about a story that they're going to write.
You're still going strong. You haven't slowed down even a bit.
No, not at all.
I guess that's the best way. That shows how much you love it. It's not.
Well, like I said before, it's also, in addition to my job, it's my hobby. I really love it, and I feel truly blessed that I found something that I love so much, because I never get tired of it. God has blessed me with a lot of energy, so I still can give a good full day's work. And we always used to joke at Massey Knakal that to be successful in real estate, you only have to work half a day. We don't care what 12 hours you work, but you got to work 12 hours a day.
That's great, actually. That's very funny. Did you when you sold, how old were you when you sold Massey Knakal to Cushman?
Well, that was at the end of 2014. So I was 52.
So you sold it for $100 million.
Right.
That was cash?
Cash. Well, it wasn't. It was 75% cash, and 25% we got not on an earnout, but if we stayed at the company, you got the other 25% in 3 years. If you left the company, you got the other 25% in 9 years.
That's why you stayed.
Well, that
3 years.
addition
Was that
thing,
what
we kept the company together, so it was
What do
good.
you mean by you kept it together? You
Well,
sold to Cushman, and then
we
within
sold
that-
to Cushman. Everybody pretty much stayed. Nobody left.
So you're getting $32.5 million.
Well, we had 9 additional partners other than Paul and I in the company. They owned 16% of the firm. So Paul and I each owned 42% of the firm.
Whatever, you did okay.
You did okay.
Was there anything that you wish you'd known before going through with that acquisition? Anything you learned from that?
Yeah, I think that employment contracts are something you have to be very careful about. And I don't regret for a second having sold the firm. It was a life-changing thing for me. Paul and I, when we started the company, we started it with the intention of one day selling it. We said, let's create something that has value. We can't just live deal to deal. Let's create something that has value and sell it one day. So that was kind of the plan from the very beginning. And everybody thinks we were so brilliant that we sold. And the best year in the past 40 years was the year we sold. More buildings sold in New York in 2014 than ever before in history or since. 5,534 buildings sold in 2014 here, which was remarkable. But we made that decision actually in 2007, after almost having sold the business to Cushman or to CBRE in 2007. That deal didn't happen for a variety of reasons back then, but we realized we'd be on 5-year contracts when we did sell. And so in 2007, we said, all right, well, let's see. In 2015, Paul's turning 55. So the perception of the value of these 5-year contracts is going to be that the contracts have more value if we're in our 50s than if we're in our 80s. So in 2014, if the market doesn't suck, we should really pull the ripcord in 2014. We get to 2014, the market's humming along. We hire an investment bank and sold, and it was just absolutely a fantastic result for us.
Were you scared in 2008, given, obviously
Yeah,
the recession?
well, it was horrible.
Maybe we should have done this in 2007.
Yeah, no, we should have. We had a $50 million offer from CB in 2007. We didn't make that deal. And 2008, 2009 were really tough. We had to fire 25% of our staff.
Really?
Which was terrible. We hated having to do that, but you have to do what you have to do in tough times. It's one of the downsides of running a brokerage business is you are at the whim of the cycles of the market. So you have to adapt. But
what's something that you would tell brokers that are new, that haven't lived through that cycle yet, that they should, the best way to protect themselves?
Well, the best way to protect yourself, I think, is to, number one, realize that you have to pay taxes. Yeah. So when you get that commission check, don't go spend the whole check. You owe the government half of it. Number two, you got to save for a rainy day because, again, markets ebb and flow. In good times, you feel like, oh, this is never going to end. This is great. Let's keep going. But you have to be a little bit conservative and put some stuff away for a rainy day because the market is going to ebb and flow. I think we're on the brink of a tremendous uptick in the market. I think that we're going to see more transaction volume this year than ever before in history. And I think that probably lasts for 2 or 3 years. So we're entering a really good phase for brokers.
Again, we're talking specifically because this is where you specialize, multifamily. So
no, I'm talking about all property types in New York. And what I'm doing a lot of today, I do a lot of land, air rights deals, redevelopment stuff. So doing a little bit of everything. I've sold more multifamily buildings than any other type of building, but that's because there's more multifamily buildings in New York than any other type. But today I'm really focused on the new legislation that's changed the face of the development market. doing a lot of development deals, taking advantage of the tax abatement programs that exist and the different zoning bonuses that are available, doing a lot of air rights transactions and stuff like that.
All right, everybody, I want to take a quick second to give a big shout out to our sponsor for this episode, CubX. CubX is, as far as I'm concerned, the #1 IT provider for businesses, whether that be big or small, real estate, healthcare, finance, e-commerce, apparel. It does not matter. These guys have it on lock. I know this because I personally use them, and I've referred these guys to probably 10 different friends of mine who are all running both small or large businesses, and they've all come back to me and have given me rave reviews about these guys and thanked me profusely for sending them their way. So if you want to get ahead and focus on the things that make you money and not be busy for hours when a tech issue comes up, give these guys a call. They have changed the game and, most importantly, have changed the IT experience for those who use them. Their customer support is off the charts. I can personally attest to this. One ring, they pick up, and you're dealing with an experienced tech who knows what's up. Feel free to test it. If you're starting a new company or are unhappy with your current IT provider and are looking for the best product out there, take it from me. This is a no-brainer choice. Give these guys a call. You can reach them at 732-444-8771 and choose sales when following the prompts. Or you can reach out via email at hello@cubx.com. That's HELLO@CUBX.com. You can also check them out at CubX.com. That's CUBX.com. Now back to our episode. As far as the next few years when it comes to multifamily, stabilized multi, right? Because it's obviously the rent laws in 19 really tanked. I mean, there are things I'm seeing that are coming in that I remember distinctly. 13 times rent in Bedford Park in the Bronx, let's just say, going for $210, $220 a door. And now it's coming on my desk, $65,000 a door, elevator bill. I mean, it's like insane. It's actually insane. Are you of the opinion that if you're someone that owns stabilized assets in New York and you could hold, that you should, or should you just cut your losses?
If you can hold, you should hold. I think that it's remarkable how HSTPA has just completely vaporized so much equity. I mean, people are wiped out. And it is remarkable. It is remarkable what's happened. So I think that it's a great buying opportunity. The overwhelming majority of folks who for decades were buying multifamily properties here are no longer interested in buying anything here at any price. The policymakers don't care. They don't care that they put people out of business. I think if they had their druthers, NYCHA would run every single apartment building in the city. But we know how that would turn out. I think it's a great buying opportunity. The political pendulum has to swing. It will swing. It's very, very heavy right now. It's going to take a Herculean effort to get that pendulum to swing. But I think it does swing at some point in time, and I think people will look back at this time and say, "Wow, I could buy buildings for $200 a foot, $150 a foot, $100 a foot. Why didn't I buy everything in sight?"
And the fact that there's so-called sunset laws, you think that there's a certain amount, everything's sunset till it's not. I mean, HSTPA, right? Officially, they were like written in, set in stone forever. That's my understanding of it. I guess the same way they put it into effect, they'll change that. Is that something that...
I assume it can be changed.
Yeah.
Anything can be changed.
Right. Okay, very interesting. Because I know that there's a lot of people that are obviously in this situation right now who are really on the fence and unsure what to do. They're bleeding, really bad. It's people forget about their equity. I mean, they're trying to hold on to whatever they can, but they're stuck between whether or not to cut their losses and just like reinvest out of state. I mean, the amount of people that won't even look in New York right now, like you're saying, is astounding. So that's really what opened up the floodgates out of New York. Do you think overall this was a big time negative for the city?
The HSTPA?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Look, just think about how this has developed over time. I'll take you back to 1978. Yankees and Dodgers playing in the World Series. Reggie Jackson's hitting all the home runs. Goodyear blimp is over Yankee Stadium, pans out. There are 6 fires going on within 3 blocks of Yankee Stadium. And Howard Cosell, the announcer, says, "The Bronx is burning." Well, why was the Bronx burning? Well, the Bronx was burning because we had a 14% dilapidation rate in our housing market, meaning 14% of the units were in such bad shape they were deemed uninhabitable by the city. So it made more sense for people to burn their building down than to invest in it. So the city wisely created 2 programs that helped dramatically: the Major Capital Improvement Program, MCI, and the Individual Apartment Improvement Program, the IAI. And those programs incentivize the private sector to invest in the housing stock, such that the private sector dumped tens of billions of dollars into the housing stock, such that in 2019, that 14% dilapidation rate had fallen to 0.04%. And so everybody had better living conditions, better quality of life, better quality of the housing stock. The values went up. And the policymakers, because they couldn't come to grips with the fact that supply is the solution to all of our housing woes, instead, they rather confiscate private property or tell people what they could do with private property as opposed to creating more property. It totally crushed the market.
Yeah.
And so now both the MCI and the IAA programs have been marginalized. There's no incentive to invest in the housing stock. There's tens of thousands of apartments that are sitting empty, reducing the supply of available apartments, which is exerting upward pressure on rents, making the city less affordable for everybody. So what our policymakers have done, they all say they want New York to be more affordable for everyone, but yet everything they've done up until the point that City of Yes has passed was do just the opposite. So they created a problem, and now we're starting to see, because of a lack of investment in the housing stock is deteriorating.
Are the tenants at this point complaining? Residents?
They should. It's when the tenants start to get loud enough and say, "Hey, my building's falling apart," and they go to the landlord, and the landlord says, "Look, I there's no incentive for me to fix the building up."
So who's the one who started? Meaning, you're obviously talking about the New York City, right? But I feel like the government did that because of the fact that tenants were obviously complaining that rents were being raised and it wasn't affordable. So it's kind of like, they, in a way, made their own bed, because soon enough, obviously owners don't want to put more money into, there's no reason
what
to put
you
money
needed, you need to create programs like, why do you let the 421A lapse? Why did you let Affordable New York lapse? Look, even if you are one of those policymakers that don't believe in economics, just look at the pandemic. We had so many people leave Manhattan. Vacancy skyrocketed. Vacancy increasing is like supply increasing. Rents dropped 30%. There's not a housing policy that's been initiated anywhere in the United States that made rents go down 10%. We had rents drop by 30. If that's not a wake-up call to incentivize the creation of new housing, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
But if you really want rents to go down and for living to be more affordable for people in New York, you have to motivate and incentivize the creation of new housing. It's the only way to do it. You could say for rent stabilized increases, you could say, we're going to reduce rents 5%. Still not going to solve the housing problem to the extent that new supply would.
Yeah. Does this stuff drive you crazy as someone who's like, you obviously feel you have a tremendous grasp. That goes without saying.
Well, it just makes no sense. Label, it makes no sense. It's like saying, I'm thirsty. I need a drink of water, and then you take a glass of water and you toss it on the ground.
No, I'm with you 1,000,000%. I mean, honestly, all this stuff drives me mad. Obviously, you have the congestion pricing, which now is it in effect now? I know Trump said he's getting rid of it. I don't know where the hell it's holding. But even that, like, there's just like another basic thing. It's like, if you want to sit down in the city at this point, you're coming from outside the city, you're paying between tolls and everything, you're paying $40. It's like, I'm not even bothering to go. Like, I just don't like, I'd rather just stay on Long Island and just do my thing there than like have to deal with this. So for like 2 months, I'm just like, it's just all these different policies. I could just imagine as someone who's living here and watching it happen, where you probably just want to pull your hair out sometimes. It's like, what are we doing? You know? And the amount of people that I personally know that moved out to Florida, moved out to Texas, like really, especially pandemic time, like you're saying, tons. I have 3 siblings that moved in the last 4 years, just picked up and left. So it's just been really, really frustrating, I guess, as a New Yorker to want to see improvement and just feel like you're being governed by people that are just
look, people. The
deliberately-
great thing about New York is that we have so much brain power here, so much energy here, so much culture here. People want to come live in New York. They want to come work in New York. But it's really, really tough. And we shouldn't have to have the people that really make this city run. The policemen, the firemen, the teachers, the people who work in a bakery or an auto mechanic. Those are the people. You can't have a society without those people.
Yeah.
But they shouldn't have to commute from an hour and a half outside the city. We need housing for everybody. It's not just extraordinarily the impoverished people. It's not this type of it. It's up and down the whole socioeconomic spectrum. We need housing. Build the housing.
Is there enough space to build more?
There's
Sorry
a
for
ton.
that. I know that might sound like an ignorant question, but
There's a ton of space.
really. So why are they not doing that?
Because politicians feel like if they did something that's going to help one real estate person, they will be frowned upon or shunned by the voting base. Even if it would help 100 New Yorkers, but you help one real estate person, you can't do that. That's the only explanation you could possibly think of. If what they say is, well, we can't have these tax abatement programs because it's just a free giveaway to developers. The developers would build anyway.
The rich get richer.
And these are people who don't look at the facts. The fact is, if you look just in prime Manhattan, and this dynamic is exacerbated in the outer boroughs, but you just look at prime Manhattan, south of 96th Street, in the last year of the old 421A, for rental land on which people are going to build rental apartments, 1.6 million buildable feet of land sold. 2 years later, without the tax abatement, 38,000 feet of land sold. The year right before Affordable New York expired, 1.5 million buildable feet of rental land sold. 2 years later, 68,000. Or did I say 68 before?
No.
It's 38,000. Was 38 then 68. I mean, these are facts. These are numbers.
Are you close with any of the policymakers?
I talk to all of them all the time.
What do they respond to you?
They shake their head and smile and probably are thinking, hey, I need to get reelected, so I don't care if this makes sense or not. I'm not going to support it.
So infuriating.
So, I mean, the numbers don't lie. So, no, they're not going to build it if they don't have a tax abatement program. This new 485X is the most misguided and useless piece of legislation that's ever been implemented. People are looking at only building under 99-unit buildings. And if you have a really big site, all the developers are spending all their time figuring out how to subdivide it to create 99-unit pads to build 99-unit buildings, so you can't afford to build more than 99 units.
Yeah.
So it's a total waste. It's 421A was good. Affordable New York was watered down 421A. 485X is way watered down Affordable New York.
It sounds like despite the trajectory going worse and worse as far as policymaking, you still are somewhat optimistic.
Well, that affects one slice of the market. There are many different sectors. You know, we're very active in land and development, in B and C office for conversion or demolition. There's lots of segments of the market here, and there are a lot of buildings, 176,000 investment properties in just the 4 boroughs, not including Staten Island. So there's a lot to do.
Staten Island doesn't count. I think we all agree to that. It's like its own.
Well, no disrespect to Staten Island, it just operates more like New Jersey than New York.
Right, I was just messing. I'm saying it's not part of New York. Cedarhurst and Lawrence is probably closer to being part of New York. I feel like, right next to Rockaway. It's interesting because when I was younger, when I first started out, someone told me in New York, you're not buying real estate, you're buying politics. And that was like, he's basically saying based on the...
Well, in certain sectors,
nature,
I would argue that, one of the things that's so crazy, like you're active in the multifamily sector. In multifamily, the way the buildings are performing is more highly correlated to public policy than to supply and demand. Think about that. Crazy. And
Explain that a little bit.
well,
do you mean by that?
the public policy determines
Yeah.
what you can pay in rent,
Yes.
determines what your real estate
Yeah,
taxes are, it determines what's going to happen with your expenses. And whether somebody wants the apartment or not, you have a unit you were renting for $700 a month that's worth $4,000 a month. You're not going to re-rent it to somebody. You based on policy, demand is there for the apartment, but you're not going to rent it because that makes no sense. You're essentially giving someone a life estate in the apartment.
Yeah.
So nobody's doing that. So it's not supply and demand that matters in multifamily. It's policy.
Policy, yeah. As opposed to, give a different example.
As
different
opposed
asset
to
class.
in retail, it's completely supply and demand driven. Right? If owners can rent their space in a day if they
That's
wanted
because-
to. It's
right,
just
because
what
there's
rent
no
you
policy
can charge.
tying you down. So
Right.
effectively, that's what the outcome is going to be. What's the average expense to income ratio right now in a typical multifamily?
It really depends. Look, real estate. Let's just look at real estate taxes alone. Real estate taxes, and when I started in the business in 1984, real estate taxes were 6 or 7% of gross revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Today, the target's 30. And based upon what's happened with rents and how some buildings are overassessed, I see some buildings where the real estate taxes are 33, 34% of revenue.
It's crazy.
And I don't think that's going to stop because when values go up, assessment adjustments are made. When value goes down, assessment are not made. If you look at the B and C office sector, values are down conservatively 50%. Most people think it's more than that. But assessments went up on B and C office. How do you justify that when it's very clear that values are down by half? So you have this thing, on apartment buildings, what my concern is, do real estate taxes get to be 50% of revenue? And then ultimately, what are you going to do? You're going to get a 35% LTV mortgage, and you're going to max out on debt? What does that do to value? If you had to put 65% equity into your acquisition, what does that do to your value proposition of those buildings? It's a slippery slope.
Yeah. No, I'm with you 1,000,000%. It's really, really crazy. It's just, I guess the most frustrating thing that I find with this type of stuff is that no one has the ability to do anything. And it doesn't make a difference, like you're saying, how brain dead it is. It's just like continues to happen and it doesn't get better. It gets worse. That was always what I was joking about. I'm like, you want to put congestion tolls or whatever you want? No problems. My life can get better. I'm happy to pay for it. The problem is I pay more, I get less. So it's like, as a taxpayer, what am I doing? It just doesn't compute ultimately at a certain point. I wanted to ask you about BRKEA right now. You started that
almost exactly 1 year ago, April 2nd of last year.
What was the goal and the vision? I should say
The goal was to have fun again, selling real estate. I beat the Massey Knakal years were a lot of fun. The 9.5 years that followed were not so much fun.
Why?
When you're an entrepreneur and you come up with an idea and you're competitive and impatient, you want those ideas to be implemented right away. And when you're part of a big machine, it's hard to have a lot of dexterity.
I can relate to this 100%.
And so I just wanted to get back to focusing on what I think I do best, is selling buildings. And so the idea was I always try to do something a little different. And so in the Massey Knakal days, that something different was having a territory system. When I got on social media in January of 2023, I looked at what brokers were doing for the most part. And it was, hey, I just listed this, I just sold that. But there wasn't anything kind of in the motivational realm, or there wasn't deal stories where you really got to see what were the really pushes and pulls, what was the seller thinking, what did they do, what was the buyer thinking, what did they do. So I tried to tell deal stories that really lift up the tent and you peek on what's going on behind the scenes, and try to share some lessons learned. I have my Knakal Nugget series, and that's lessons learned by virtue of making hundreds of mistakes over the course of my career. I've learned a lot, so I try to share that with people.
Can you share some of those, just some that stick out to you, top of your head?
Yeah, just be an expert at something. Always follow up with people. Do what you say you're going to do. When you don't win an assignment, wait a couple of weeks, but then call the client and ask them why. You learn much more from your failures than from your successes, and just it goes on and on. I have 100 of these. So I again try to look at it a little differently. Try to bring something different. So with BRKEA, the different thing that I wanted to bring is I really enjoy doing ground up development deals, selling land. And so with all the new legislation that's happened, the new 485X, the 467M, the UAP, the different rezonings, the rezoning in the Bronx, the rezoning in Gowanus, the rezoning in Midtown South. I said, you know what I'm going to have BRKEA do is, and we're going to do brokerage like a developer would do it, not like a broker would do it. So in-house, we have a zoning attorney, zoning consultant, architect, policy guru, cost estimators. We have people, we can dice and slice any development deal any number of ways, figure out how to maximize the value. And that's been a lot of fun also. So I always try to do things a little differently.
That's creative. How many people are there now?
We have 15 people now.
How do you think AI is going to impact this industry?
I think AI has potential to do a lot. I think it will change the business significantly, but depends what area of the business you're talking about. We use AI in three ways. One and two are prospecting and deal execution, which those are both very, very similar processes. They're funneling processes. You start with thousands of people, get to hundreds, to dozens, to a few, and AI is great for that in terms of making that process quicker, easier, more efficient.
When you say prospecting, you mean once you have a listing?
No. To talk about going out and getting listings,
okay.
Finding people who want to sell.
Making sure we're on the same page.
So finding people who want to sell, that's prospecting. And then the deal execution, which is actually after you have the listing, selling the building. The third way, which really has the greatest potential, but is going to be the hardest for the industry to use, is in data interpretation. And the reason it has potentially the most upside is that AI can do millions of calculations a second. The problem the industry is going to have is most data sets in the industry are horrible. And when it comes to data, and I've been a statistics guy my whole career, absolute numbers are not nearly as meaningful as the relationship between numbers in a data set. So for instance, if I tell you that in 2019, the dollar amount of sales in Manhattan was $26.3 billion. You have no idea what to think of that number right now, probably. But if I tell you that at the peak of the market in 2015, it was $57.4 billion, and at the bottom of the market in 2020, it was $11.1 billion, you start to have some feel to what that is. And so what matters is whether numbers are going up or going down. How much are they going up? How much are they going down? How many years in a row have they been going up or going down? Yeah. And the relationship or the integrity between those numbers in a data set over time is completely dependent upon the methodology used to calculate the data. If I asked 4 people to calculate a cap rate, I'd probably get 4 different answers because are you using trailing 12? Forward 12, what are you doing with vacancies? Where are you getting your numbers to project the vacancies? What is your stabilized vacancy increase? All of these things. So if you haven't used the same exact methodology year after year after year, the integrity between your numbers falls
It's
apart.
scared, yeah.
And so I've seen, at a lot of these companies, they have a different head of research. Every couple of years, it turns over, and the new person has a different idea about how to calculate stuff. So historically, the numbers totally lose it. So fortunately, because I've been so into data for so long, I have data sets now that are 40 years old that have used the same exact methodology over all 40 years. So we're applying AI models to those data sets and coming up with some really interesting stuff that, within the next short period of time here, we're coming out with the Knakal Land Index that's going to look at land values in Manhattan over time. We have a multifamily data set that, again, these all go back to 1984. And some pretty cool stuff is coming out of it.
Do you think there's any world of where a human could be replaced as far as brokerage is concerned? Or
No.
do we always need that
No,
human element?
I think because buildings are not widgets,
Yeah.
you're always going to need human interaction. I always said AI will never replace anybody, but somebody using AI will replace somebody that's not using AI.
Interesting. I heard that. Do you use CRMs, or are you just one of those people that
Yeah, no, we use CRMs. Absolutely, gotta kind of keep things
I'm
as
asking you
organized as you can.
specifically, as opposed to, I know the average broker, of course, does, but then I know
Yeah,
other
no.
people that are just, they're flow people. They have great memories, and they are really they work much quicker, within
Yeah,
a
and I think
flow.
you have to have a CRM. I mean, the way things are going today, I think clients are expecting in real time to know, hey, how many CAs are signed? How many
Yeah.
bids do we have? Who looked at it yesterday? What questions did they ask today? And I think if you can't deliver that to a client in real time, you're falling behind.
Yeah.
And so you need a CRM in order to do that.
No, I definitely hear that. So as far as the specific direction that BKRE is taking, BKREA, I got that extra. You're on your own right over there. You don't have any. You have a partner there?
Well, everybody at the firm is a partner.
Everyone's a
The way I
partner.
look at it, and we're all working together as a team. My wife and I, my partner's my wife. My wife
really?
owns the majority of my company, and she's our company comptroller. And she's handled my personal finances for a long time now. She's handling the finances of the business, and that's been a great thing.
Love it. Who are some of the brokers that you admire in the industry?
Oh gosh, so many, so many friends, and you know what? I won't.
You gotta give some names. I'm not gonna let you get away with
All right,
just
you're not
so
going to let me get away. All right. Well, let me just say this, that the Massey Knakal legacy has left a number of things that I'm very proud of. We sold from 2001 to 2014. We sold 3x the number of buildings as the number 2 firm. We were competing with the big national. We were a little local popcorn stand. We were competing with the national firms, the global firms. We ate their lunch every day. The number 2 firm, according to CoStar, number 2 firm over that period of time had sold about 1,300 buildings. We sold over 4,000. So we lapped the field by more than 3 times for 14 years in a row. I don't know that anybody's ever done that in any market, in any sector in the United States.
Who was the number 2 firm?
Marcus and Millichap.
Okay.
The selling for $100 million was a great result for us. But the thing I'm most proud of is that today in the New York City investment sales world, there are 31 companies or divisions of companies that are either owned by or run by people that learned the real estate business at Massey Knakal.
Wow.
And so you look at people like James Nelson, who runs investment sales at Avis and Young nationwide, Shimon Shakuri at Ariel, Ofer Cohen, or Terrace CRG, and I could go on and on and on with all these great companies that came out of our firm. Paul Massey's running B6 now. I have BKREA, but literally 31 different companies or divisions of companies that have Massey Knakal people at the helm.
That's a big accomplishment. In a sense, it's like fulfilling a purpose. It's in a certain sense, as opposed to, of course, if you make $100 million, that's obviously very nice, extremely nice. But when you see that success of the people that you taught the industry, that must be very
we
rewarding.
always wanted everybody to do better than us. That was part of, we ran the business very much with a servant leadership management style. What did that mean? That means investing heavily in training for people. We wanted people to really do great and to do better than their best. And in order to do better than their best, we had to build up their self-esteem.
What does that look like? What does that training look like?
Oh, we had initial success training where you had to study your territory. You had to get to know who owned every building, how many sales occurred over the past 3 years, what the average price per foot was, what the average cap rate was, and who owned the most buildings, who owned the most square footage, who owned the most units, and it really knew that. And then, then after you did initial success training, we had continued training, which it was a weekly training session that we had for the entire company. And it was on things like, we had Bob Cialdini come in, who's the head of the psych department at University of Arizona, probably the leading authority in the United States on persuasion, come in and talk to our guys. We had the Harvard professor, Bill Urey, come in. He wrote a great book called The Power of a Positive No, teaching folks about time management and things like that. Professor Donaldson from the Wharton School did a session for us on business ethics.
How many brokers did you have at the height?
At the height, we had 250 people.
Wow. What are some common mistakes you see happening right now?
Right now, I think, again, you have to just stick to what you do best. And, a lot of folks have shiny object syndrome. They're doing this, but they see this over here, and hey, I could do this, I could do that. And unfocused. You have to. It requires using discipline really well. You got to keep doing it and keep doing it. We say in the office, we say you got to pound the rock. And pound the rock is the stonecutter's creed. So stonecutter comes into the shop in the morning, sits in front of a big block of stone, takes a mallet and pounds the thing 99 times. Nothing's happened. Boom, 100th time, rock splits in half. And if you don't know any better, you think, oh, that 100th one was different. That 100th, there was a different mallet, hit it harder, or it was a different angle. Stonecutter knows, no, it's the same exact thing. It's the 99 that came before that made that 100th one work. And you just got to keep doing it over and over and over again.
The famous soda bottle thing where everyone's passing the bottle around, no one can get it open, and it's the final person who opens it up. And it's like, I did it, the person says, no, it's because of me.
Right.
The reason why you got... So it's interesting because I have found that when a lot of people give up on, especially with difficult and very grueling tasks and businesses, people give up right before they sort of are about to have success, where they push through another 6 months, a year, and they'd break through. And that's sort of why I asked originally how much time you got to give it. Because then you have the people that stay in it too long, and they're sitting there for 3-4 years. I wish I got out of insurance earlier. I just didn't want to have shiny object syndrome and just run to the next thing. So I was like, I swore to myself, I'm going to stay in this for a certain amount of time. And finally, I was just like, all right, I'm done with this.
Right.
But, that was my particular, everyone's situation is different. And I know that everyone in their own mind is always thinking, we don't have a crystal ball. We can't see ahead what it's going to be. So we're always questioning, is now the time to walk away, or is now the moment to actually hang in there? And this is what Bob was talking about the 100th, hit is coming in a few months,
Right.
So that's always, a difficult space, and where I find a lot of people have questions. What would you say, young broker right now looking to get into the industry, what would you say is the best path?
If you're just starting out, I would go work in an environment where you can learn from somebody. Have a mentor, somebody that you can work closely with that can teach you the business. I think that is the best learning curve you can have. There are some big shops that have great training programs, Marcus & Millichap being one of them, Matthews another one that has great training. I would get great training or understand the fundamentals of the business, but I think more importantly than anything is connect yourself with a mentor that you can learn from on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I try to do that for the folks in our office. I sit in a cube right exactly in the middle of the trading floor, and I want everybody to hear what I'm saying all day long. I think that's the best training that I can give them.
Yeah.
I want to hear what they're saying. They want to hear what I'm saying. And so I think connecting yourself with somebody you can learn from is probably the most important thing you can do.
Which deal do you see as your most impressive work when you think back? You've sold
the next one.
Give me
How
a.
about
I'm
that?
sure you had a couple that were just like
No,
absolutely.
well, look, I've been nominated for Most Ingenious Deal of the Year 7 times, won it twice. Those deals were great, but it's the deal that is the one where the client really understands how much you did for them and really appreciates it. Those are the ones that I think are the most rewarding, and those are the ones that I remember. And so I think if I think back, it just actually the most rewarding deals for me, I would say, are the ones for the folks who only own one building, and they got into ownership in some circuitous way. They inherited it from their mom or dad. They ran a business out of it, so they ended up buying it, but they're not real estate people, and they're really in way over their head. And when you can go in, and I had so many times people say to me, Bob, look, you're in the business, all these buyers, you've done many deals with them. Why do you care about me? Aren't you going to throw me under the bus to do a good deal for somebody you've done a bunch of deals with, and you're going to continue for years and years and years to do deals with? And I say, no. Look, I only represent sellers. I'm agnostic as to who buys the property. I'm just going to get you the highest price. And they say, well, why would you give a buyer a hard time if they're a client of yours and they're going to be a client of yours for another 20 years? I say, you know why? Because they know if they want to buy your property and I make it really hard for them and I extract the last penny out of them, they know if I'll do that to them, I'll do that to anybody that's trying to buy one of their properties.
Yeah.
And so they're going to hire me to sell their building. And I think those are the ones that are the most rewarding for me, when you're helping somebody that really, really needs help. They're over their head, and you produce a good result for them. You feel really good about that.
Yeah, and also what I love about what you're sharing is the ethical standard that you're holding. It's like, I'm not gonna screw over a more vulnerable, person who owns one building, where I really probably could take for a ride and just convince him his asset is worth 20% less than it is and make a long-term client very happy. It's very straight. I mean, I think our industry, it is pretty ripe for obviously it creates a lot of ethical difficulties for a lot of people. I think we could all agree. What would you tell people that find themselves struggling with that type of stuff?
So, number one, figure out, do you really love it? Do you really love it or not? You got to love it. If you don't love it, it's going to be tough to do it long term. Two, are you focused on one thing and trying to be the best at that one thing and being a true expert? One of the books I love, and I have a suggested reading list on bobknakal.com, and one of the books I love is Jim Collins' Good to Great. And he says that the main difference between the great companies and the good companies is that the great company identifies the one thing that they want to do better than anybody else in the world. And every decision they make, everything they do, every policy they have is geared around that one objective. And whether it's having Coke or ginger ale in the kitchen, or whether it's, do we hire this functionality or that functionality, or do we spend more money on this or less money? Every decision is guided by, how do we become the best at that one particular thing? And I think as individuals, that's what we should try to achieve, is get to the point where you become the go-to person
in your space
for a particular type of deal. Maybe it's a type of property, maybe it's a size deal, maybe it's a location, maybe it's a combination of factors. But if you get to be known as the go-to person for that particular type of deal, this business stops going from a deal-to-deal business and becomes an annuity for you. And think about this. Let's say you're out, you're playing basketball, and you rip your ACL in your knee, and you have to have surgery. And you go to two different doctors, and you go to one doctor and say, oh, ACL, knee ACLs, done hundreds of them. I could also do your elbow, I could do your shoulder, I could do your ankle, whatever you got problems, I'm the guy. Then you go to the next guy, he says, I only do knee ACLs. I've done 10,473 of them. That's all I do.
Yeah.
Who are you going to have do your surgery?
I'm with you 1,000,000%. It's funny because people don't. Everyone likes to be a jack of all trades. It's a very oddly it's something that drags people about it towards that when it really shouldn't. Like,
Yeah, I always say to people,
it's
you know, hey, we sell buildings, and someone will come in, hey, I have this client, I had a great meeting with the client, he wants me to rent his store. He wants me to rent his apartments. I said, why would you want to do that? No, oh, I could make money.
Yeah.
I said, you know what? You could go buy some cocaine and sell it on the corner and make money too. Do you really, you just want to make money, or you want to create a career for yourself?
Yeah, I heard that 100%. Any specific habit? Obviously you mentioned discipline, but anything specific within that that's been very fundamental to you?
No, I think when you have to block out time, the number one revenue generating activity that you can do as a broker is making prospecting calls. And if you've been in the business for a while, there's no way, like we're here on a Monday night, there's no way you could look at your calendar for Thursday and block out 4 or 5 hours to make prospecting calls. You got too much on your calendar already. You got to block that time out at least 2 or 3 weeks in advance. But when you block it out, you got to stick to it. That's like, do not plug another meeting in for that time. You have to make sure that you make those prospecting calls. And if you do, that also takes some of that volatility out of your income and your deal flow and your pipeline and that kind of thing.
One thing I wanted to go back to, because I meant to ask you, as far as securing listings, what is there any specific good tactics, good advice you would share for really new brokers, of course, but for brokers in general, when they're meeting with owners to try to secure a listing?
Yeah, just if you're going for exclusives, number one, you have to show you understand the market. So you do your BOV and have a lot of market data in there, so it shows you know the market. And number two, have a value proposition that resonates with the client. Why should they hire you? There are 10,000 people trying to do what you're doing. Why should the client hire you as opposed to anybody else? What have you done for other people in their circumstance? What are you going to do for them? How are you going to do it?
Yeah.
How long will it take? What's your reporting process like? Why do you do the things you do? Do you work with other brokers? What are the things? I think it's important to clearly articulate what it is exactly that you're going to do for them.
Yeah, you have to really lay it out.
A lot of times I'll call speak to a potential seller and say, oh, but I'm not going to hire an exclusive agent. I said, okay, look, I wouldn't expect you to say you would hire an agent until you knew exactly what I could do for you. I'm happy to put this report together, tell you what I think your property's worth, tell you exactly what I would do for you in terms of marketing the property. And if after you've heard that, you say to me, hey, Bob, I'm not going to hire an exclusive agent, no harm, no foul. You told me up front you weren't going to do that. I'm telling you up front, I don't work for anybody unless they hire me exclusively. I'm willing to put this report together for you. Let me put it together. Let's meet, talk about it. If you still say you don't want to hire anybody, no problem. But just know I won't do anything for you.
It's a good pitch. I like it. It's kind of like the micro commitment. Let's just meet. I'll give you the BOV. If you're still not interested, as opposed to probably most people would try selling him right on that first call. When he says he's not interested, they probably run to, forget about the BOV, they cut straight to, you should hire me, X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier, obviously, to just agree for a coffee, when there's no commitment, and just move it along, so to speak. And when he sees, obviously, the work that you're going to be putting in for him, to be much more open to signing. So that definitely makes sense. You've obviously You've been a legend in this space. What do you want to be remembered for end of the day when this is all said and done?
Somebody who was pretty good at what he did and
did that
helped other people. And, again, the legacy that we created with MK and the 31 companies and divisions of companies is a great thing. I'd like to produce more of those. I'd like to create great opportunities for the folks that I'm working with today, and continue to help clients and have them give that positive feedback at the end of the process and create friends out of those clients. Many of the folks who started out as clients have become friends of mine, and that feels good too. But I think just someone who did the right things the right way and was good to people, and I guess, as you'd say, a mensch.
Yeah, for sure. I assume you made a lot of good friends from the Jewish community as well.
Oh, absolutely.
I can only imagine. I mean, there's a whole bunch of us buying multifamily here, right? Anything you want to plug specifically?
No, just if anybody has any questions about the real estate market or about my company, feel free to go to BKREA.com, go to BobKnakal.com, or just shoot me an email at BKREA.com, and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Awesome. Bob, I want to say thank you so much, really. I really appreciate your time coming out here. So, yeah, really, thank you so much. It means the world. Guys, hope you enjoyed. Back next week with another amazing episode. Peace and love.